The last straw was yet another escapade by the elderly landlady. Baba Raya had always been, to put it mildly, an interesting character. But sometimes her oddities crossed all boundaries. When I came home from work yesterday, the apartment was open. It reeked of liver pies and empty cabbage soup, consisting only of cabbage and potatoes. Sometimes Baba Raya had fits of care and sought to feed the skinny lad, me, whom she considered almost her own son. She was watching another show on TV, and next to the serene old woman, the cat Marussia, who lived in this apartment with me, was giving birth. And Baba Raya, without even looking away from the screen, was taking the squeaking kittens and drowning them in a large 3-liter jar of water. I hope you imagined this spectacle well, and you can also imagine my shock. Outwardly, I didn't show any of my real emotions, possibly due to extreme fatigue. I was literally half dead, so I somehow held back the retching spasms and slipped past, trying not to look at the disgusting scene at all. I spent the rest of the evening in my room, simply undressed and collapsed on the bed, lying there staring at my smartphone screen. Baba Raya silently left, leaving the meager food on the stove, and I fell asleep. The next day, everything repeated. A difficult awakening, coffee, a cigarette, and work again. Time flew by unnoticed. To be honest, I had even somewhat forgotten about yesterday's incident over the past night and workday. In the evening, I returned to this shabby little apartment again, tired as a beaten dog once more. This time the old woman wasn't there, thank God. The last thing I needed was that crazy old bat. Today is Friday. I wanted to rest properly and relax. Maybe I'll draw a bath and lie in hot water. Yeah, that would be great. It hasn't been easy for me to survive a full 10 days without a single day off, especially when forced to haul heavy loads for 14 hours a day for pennies. Working as a loader at a vegetable warehouse turned out to be not as easy as I had assumed. I'm only 25, and somehow I ended up almost at rock bottom. My lower back hurts terribly, all my muscles ache. I feel like a feeble old man. I need to warm up my bones properly. After just 10 minutes, I was already in the prepared bath and completely relaxed. The aches and heaviness in my limbs subsided. My tired brain simply drifted, refusing to think from the oncoming euphoria. Suddenly, I noticed a jar on the nightstand. An ordinary glass jar like that, filled with some cloudy sludge. Baba Raya had many such treasures scattered all over the apartment. She would come once a week, collect all the leftover hard and liquid soap into such jars, pour water over them, and let them steep. Then she would take this sludge and wash her things with it. I wasn't very happy about it. But the old woman has a tiny pension, and I paid very little for the Khrushchevera apartment. In short, she managed as best she could. Besides, there was simply no one to help her. In that, we are alike. So, I thought it was just another jar of soap. At least, it looked very similar. And the devil made me verify my thoughts. I reached for it and turned it, disturbing the contents. Suddenly, the head of a dead kitten floated up from the murky water. Then a few more. As soon as I saw this, I jumped out of the water as if scalded by boiling water. And I ran out of the room, slipping on the linoleum darkened with age. It's that same jar with the kittens. The old idiot simply left it in the bathroom, the fool. A goddamned fool. I said out loud everything I thought about Abraya. I cursed her with every obscene word I knew. She probably started yapping from how loudly and soulfully I was swearing. That's it. No, I'm not staying here anymore. No way. Well, the time has come to admit that I couldn't make it in Moscow. The capital didn't accept me. Apparently, this really isn't the place for me. Everyone back in my hometown kept telling me that. But I'm a stubborn ram. I didn't listen to anyone. I thought I would come to Moscow, earn good money, start life with a clean slate. Yeah, right. A naive moron. Seems it's time to go back to my roots. Enough adventures. Good thing I have very few belongings. I can leave today. There's even a bus, in a few hours, on which I can return to my familiar environment. To be honest, I often thought about it, but pride wouldn't allow me to turn back. And now I've definitely decided that I can't flounder in this shit anymore, like some lowlife. Better to live in Mukosransk again, but at least live like a human, and not eke out my miserable existence trying to survive among prim, overfed people. While packing my things, I texted my boss at work and the landlady on WhatsApp. Warned them that I was leaving and didn't plan to return. Good thing life taught me to be frugal. I managed to save up some money even from my beggarly salary. Now I'll start living anew with a clean slate. That's how I ended up back where I started. I made the decision to move to the capital after burying my father. He had been seriously ill for a very long time and died after several long years. And I was left alone. That's why I decided to take a risk. I hoped Mother Moscow would accept me favorably. After all, I'm young and full of ambition. What could go wrong? As it turned out, absolutely everything. Everything went wrong. The money from the sale of my father's one-room apartment was only enough to cover debts from his expensive treatment. And very little was left for the first while. And now, after 4 months, I'm returning. I arrived late the next night. Stayed in a cheap hostel. In the morning, the first thing I did was start looking for decent, but still not too expensive, housing. I didn't have enough money to be very choosy. To my surprise, a suitable option was found quickly. It was offered to me by my former classmate Sveta. Now she was a realtor for a startup company. She's great. She was always a feisty girl. Knows how to get what she wants. Everything as I wanted. The neighborhood where I used to live. Far from the center, without noise and extra hustle. A dead-end street packed with small, attached houses. I took a liking to a 2-story one. It's cozy here, like in the distant past. As if time had slowed down so much that nothing had changed since my childhood. Actually, I'm sure nothing has changed here since Soviet times. Remember those black and white photos straight from the Soviet Union? The atmosphere here is exactly the same. As if the houses were transported to the past. The interior was also old. The Soviet period was famous for its shortages. Of almost everything. And since the choice was extremely limited, people made do with what was available. The house had a bed with a metal mesh frame. A large wardrobe, a round table, a huge sideboard, and several chairs of varying heights. Even a TV. Not the familiar flat panel on the wall, but a huge tube set that majestically towered over the floor on 4 legs. It's hard to imagine a Soviet interior without doilies on the tables. They covered all large items, from hall tables to living room TVs. Lace, lace, lace. Here the house was drowning in lace, yellowed with time and frequent changes of owners. Naturally, there were carpets, lots of carpets, and also small, cheap tapestries with images of deer or bears hung on the walls. It smells of laundry detergent, dry wood, and a little dust. Nothing fancy. I think everyone is familiar with this old-fashioned coziness. Like in those distant times when I stayed at my grandmother's. If everything here is so great, then a logical question arose. Why such a democratic price? Of course, it's unlikely you could rent out a house for more on such a dead-end street. But something tells me that's not the only reason. Sveta honestly admitted that a good half of the houses here are abandoned. And in the other half, pensioners live out their days. Ordinary grandmothers and grandfathers over 60. To my question, why is the living space so cheap? The girl said that all previous tenants didn't like the neighbors. And they left. They lowered the price on the houses. How can some harmless old people be so unappealing? The maximum harm from them is grumbling. But all elderly people are like that. And who else could live in such an old neighborhood? Certainly not young people. Strange tenants. We once again walked through the house and stopped in the small kitchen. Well, Sash, that's about it. Does it suit you? Sveta smiles at me with a white-toothed smile, looking ingratiatingly into my face. Oh, if only she had smiled at me like that back in school, I would have been jumping for happiness. The rent is low, utilities are already included in the price. And the commission for our agency is reasonable. There's a small forest nearby and the Bagel. That's a small lake if you've forgotten. Remember why it's called the Bagel? Of course, I remembered. Because in the middle of the murky green puddle, loudly called a lake, there was a sand mound and a tree grew on it. 10 years ago, Sveta and I almost kissed when we were relaxing at the bagel. And then our paths diverged. She fell in love with Anton, a tall brunette, and I plunged headlong into desocialization. Svetlana Igorevna, as her badge stated, continued to persuade me so that I absolutely couldn't refuse. But I wasn't even thinking about refusing. I really liked the place, especially after our shared memories. Of course, I'll take it. Such a chance can't be missed. After that, the girl gave me a hefty set of keys to the house. Before leaving, she turned around and unexpectedly looked at me very seriously. Look, if you see a short man with a dark mustache, just ignore him. Don't look at him and especially don't talk to him. Whatever he does, even if he gets on all fours and barks. An unpleasant type often wanders around this area, peeks into yards. But if you don't talk to him, he won't touch you. Just don't notice him. I shrugged. An alcoholic or something? Or just homeless? Sort of local crazy. Various rumors go around about him. They say the guy is somehow connected with evil spirits. He has some kind of power. No one knows where he lives, but he hangs around the nearby streets several times a week. And he often comes to your street. Okay, not noticing means not noticing. Seems simple enough. Although I think all these rumors are complete nonsense. I don't believe in the devil or God. Well, you haven't changed in all these years. That's good. You're a grown man now, you'll figure it out. If anything happens in the house, I'll send you the landlord's number. She hurried away, clicking her heels, and I started unpacking my things. Time flowed on. I found a new, good job, lived quietly, lazed around and rested in my free time. A week passed. During these days, I acquired a new habit. Every time before going to bed, I looked out the window. I can't say what I wanted to see there. Probably, I was curious to see who else was awake at such a late hour. One late evening, I was, as usual, staring out the window of my second-floor bedroom, when suddenly I noticed a person on the street. He was standing on the other side of the road. Thanks to the moonlight, I could make out what kind of man it was. A guy, just a guy. Looks like the most ordinary. Probably came out for some air or is just returning from a drinking session. I was about to turn off the light when I realized he was looking straight into my window. Right at me. Looking very attentively. Clearly studying me carefully. Maybe it's him? That crazy one. Sveta's description fits him exactly. The stranger confidently moved towards my house. And I, taken by surprise, hit the switch and the only light in the house went out. Too late to pretend no one's home. I pressed myself against the wall and slowly peeked out to assess the situation. He was already so close to the first-floor windows that he could easily see the entire interior. My first thought was to sit tight and not move until the creepy guy left. And the second was to check if the front door was locked. Unfortunately, I didn't remember if I had locked it or not. Needed to check urgently. I tiptoed down the stairs. Naturally, I tripped over scattered shoes and empty pizza boxes in the hallway. The door wasn't locked. I very, very quietly turned the key, and the lock clicked distinctly. And a couple of moments later, that guy yanked hard on the doorknob from the other side. My heart just dropped into my stomach. I rushed back upstairs to my bedroom at a run. I'm a grown man, almost 2 meters tall, but I was so scared I could hear my teeth chattering. From the room, I watched him for a while longer until he left. For my own peace of mind, I decided he was really drunk and simply mistook the house. There are many similar houses around, right? I hope so. But now I have no doubt that Sveta was talking about him. The second time I saw him was a couple of days later. Again late at night. This time it was very dark outside, and I couldn't get a good look at him. But he was definitely holding something in his hands. Something furry, the size of a small animal. A cat? Or maybe a small dog. What if I'm just imagining all sorts of nonsense, and that man is simply walking his pet? In that case, I'm a complete idiot. While I was thinking, the animal in his arms jumped down and ran across the road again towards my house. And the man sharply turned around and ran away at full speed. A madman. He really is crazy. This time I was sure the front door was locked. I was definitely safe. I'd had too hard a day to think about this for too long. There are plenty of nutcases in this world. Time to sleep. I began to sink into oblivion as soon as my head touched the pillow. The tension in my muscles was replaced by blissful numbness. Suddenly, something soft and warm touched my shoulder. My tired brain tried to figure out what was happening. Thoughts stirred sluggishly in my skull. Through the oncoming sleep, I thought it was Marussia. The cat came to my bed again because it's too cold to sleep on the floor now. It's November after all. She sniffed my skin greedily, and then I felt something wet. She licked me, and this time the small, rough cat tongue seemed very large and unnaturally slimy to me. "Maris, get off, I want to sleep." I mumbled barely audibly and weakly pushed the cat away. She made a strange smacking sound and crawled closer to my feet. Involuntarily, the long-awaited sleep receded. Awareness of what was happening slowly crept into my head. I'm not in the old woman's apartment anymore. What Marussia? Where would she come from? Maybe another neighbor's cat got into the house? But how? The windows and doors are closed. Then who was it? As soon as it dawned on me, I jerked my whole body and sat up sharply in bed. While sitting up, I kicked it with my foot. And then it fell off the bed and began to slowly move away. But not running or hopping. The familiar sound of cat steps or the clicking of claws wasn't heard. I don't even know how to say it. This thing rolled. In the empty room, that strange, dull sound of rolling on a wooden floor echoed. "What the hell, what are you?" I grabbed my phone and immediately turned on the flashlight, directing the beam of white light to where the strange thing had rolled. But I only managed to see a tuft of red. Not exactly fur, not exactly hair. It darted around the corner, and all sounds abruptly ceased. Cold sweat broke out on my back. Perspiration appeared on my forehead. After an hour of convincing myself that I had dreamed it all, I finally believed myself and was able to sink back into sleep. This time I slept until morning. There they are, the long-awaited days off. Naturally, the nighttime incident was quickly forgotten. I tidied up the house, cooked food for the whole week, and looked forward to making sandwiches and playing video games on my old laptop. All in all, the day went well. When I settled into the armchair and was about to plunge into the world of zombie killing, a notification popped up on the side of the screen from a VK group. "News in our city. Be the first to know all the interesting things." Hesitation lasted a few seconds. I love reading news digests, and I can't help myself. Okay, I'll just glance with one eye and then play right away. Among articles about this year's bountiful harvest, what went out of fashion, and ads for a hair salon, there was something interesting. I stumbled upon an article that 2 days ago, some Nikiforov Fedor Ivanovich had brutally murdered his common-law wife. He stabbed the woman in her sleep, inflicted 28 knife wounds, and then cut off her head. The worst part is he disappeared. The murderer vanished without a trace, and no one has seen him. The head wasn't found. Fedor took it with him. A psycho. What a horror. Why are there so many mentally ill people around? And in our city, too. Of course, such terrible things happen everywhere. But when it happens so close to you, you start thinking about the transience of life. I scrolled the article to the very end and my gaze fell on the photographs. And that's when it got really creepy for me. The photo showed an unkempt woman, middle-aged with a mop of red tangled hair, and also a man with a dark, bushy mustache and a face puffy from heavy drinking. It was him. It's definitely him. There can be no mistake. This was the guy who stood under my windows and pulled on the doorknob trying to get inside. It's scary to even imagine what this psycho would have done if I hadn't checked the front door. My gaze kept returning to the photo. The woman with red hair. Yesterday he was holding something in his hands. Could it be? It was her head. They didn't find the head. So he was wandering the streets with the head of his dead common-law wife in his hands. And then at night I saw something red. Okay, enough thinking about it. There was nothing. I didn't see anything. And psychos, they are everywhere. If I keep working myself up, nothing good will come of it. I need to pretend nothing happened. Nothing. I closed the news, turned off the laptop. Wasn't in the mood for games. I spent the rest of the evening mindlessly staring at the barely working TV. Damn it. I had to look at him. Shouldn't have. Sveta warned me. What would have happened if I simply hadn't noticed him? A whole week passed. And all these damn 7 days I was on pins and needles. Jumped at any noise, hardly slept. And if I managed to fall asleep, I woke up from any extraneous sounds. And I was so tired of living in constant fear these days, that if that's what the guy wanted, to scare me, to lull my vigilance with my lack of sleep. As soon as I could figure out his plan, I bought a mild sedative at the pharmacy. And life immediately became more pleasant. I let the situation go. The police are looking for the murderer. Patrol cars often drive around our neighborhood, keeping an eye on order. I have nothing to fear. That night, I went to bed with a calm soul, confident that nothing would happen. I woke up around midnight, lying on my back. Something was pressing mercilessly on my chest. There was catastrophically little air. I opened my eyes, and right in front of me, I saw a head. A red, shaggy woman's head. It was staring at me and opening its mouth wide with sparse teeth. And then it started screaming. You looked at him, looked. You weren't supposed to, you looked. Fedia doesn't like that. Hates it so much. If you look, it means you want him to come. Now wait for him. The head screeched horrifically. It stared at me with bulging, cloudy eyes, almost like a fish's, and it hoarsely gasped for air. A strange whistling sound was audible when the head breathed, probably because the trachea was severed. Then the head giggled quietly, like a naughty child, and tumbled backward. It fell to the floor with a dull thud and rolled towards the doorway, and then stopped at someone's feet. He was standing outside the bedroom threshold. Short, somewhat stout, with a bushy dark mustache. I found him, Fidenka, I found him. This fool thought I wouldn't get to him. But I could. She rubbed against the man's feet like a devoted dog. The man moved towards me, clutching a kitchen knife in his hand.